I designed and built a custom cedar trestle table for a client, and in this video I want to show you the foundation of that table. I will be explaining all the joinery involved and detailing the tips and tricks I used along the way. In the end, my dad and I successfully delivered the table to the client's house, and we used a U-Haul as it was far too big for the truck. Shopfix. It's for the love of woodworking. So the joinery I'm about to create is pretty intricate and required a lot of steps and in the right order. I was getting ready to precisely join 3 pieces together, which would make up the basis of a 9-foot table, so it needed to be rock solid. The first step in this process was to create a large dado in the very top of the trestle leg. The width of this dado needed to match that of the beam, which will span across the middle and join the trestle legs together. These pieces are 4 inches in thickness, which left plenty of room for a large dado while also leaving plenty of wood to ensure it keeps its strength. After marking the location of the dado to the adjoining board, I went back to the table saw to complete the dado cut. I'm using a 1/4 inch thick dado stack here along with my table saw crosscut sled, and with one more pass, I now have both dado slots cut for the crossbeam that will span between the trestle legs. Then I traced the ends of the dado, which will act as my next cut lines. For this dado cut, I will be using the miter saw as the 4x4 cedar is far too long for the table saw and crosscut sled. Your miter saw will need to be equipped with a depth stop to properly cut a large dado like this, as the depth stop is what prevents the blade from slicing all the way through. To complete this dado, I simply slid the board down until I cut up to the reference line I previously marked out. Alternatively, the dado could be swapped for a large rabbet cut, meaning you could simply cut along the lines with a bandsaw. The dado helps with positioning in the next steps, but ultimately the end of the dado will be removed for aesthetics. The miter saw leaves a pretty rough surface on the wood, so I use a 3/4 chisel to clean it all up and get it smooth and flat. With the adjoining dado cuts now complete, I needed to work on the Dow Joinery that would help connect all 3 of these pieces together. I began by sanding the trestle leg piece so that it had a flat surface for the glue joint. At some point, I had the idea of sticking a floor sanding pad to a flat reference surface, and I cannot tell you how much it has come in handy. Well, with the surface prepped, it was time to mark the position of the dowel. I'll be securing a single 1-inch dowel through the center of these 3 pieces. I used the same technique to secure the trestle leg base and post as well. Essentially, once the center punch has marked the wood, the tape then acts as the reference mark for the adjoining piece. The trick is to carefully remove the tape and secure it onto the unmarked piece. I noticed that a thumbtack worked great to secure the tape. Then the marked piece is removed to allow access to the adjoining board. I then used the center punch, referencing the hole in the tape, to mark the trestle leg post. If the tape is transferred accurately without any shifting, then the markings will be perfectly aligned for the dowel joinery. Now it was time to drill the holes for the dowels. Since I want the dowel to go all the way through the posts and up to the beam, I needed to drill this hole while the trestle piece was mounted inside the dado. I also clamped on a reference board on the bottom so that my auger bit wouldn't tear out the wood when it came out the other side. With the hole drilled into the crossbeam, it was now time to create the hole in the post. I set the depth stop on the Milescraft drilling guide to drill at a 3-inch depth. I joined the base and post together using a 3-inch depth as well. I numbered all the boards prior to drilling with either a 1 or 2, and also marked which way to orientate them so that I can align them all correctly for the glue up. For this glue up, I needed to apply glue along the trestle post and the dowel pin hole first. I made sure to apply an ample amount of glue and to spread it evenly over the entire surface. You might notice the X marking on the front of the post here that I made to make sure that I aligned the pieces correctly. Once I had the top piece set into place, I then could take the dowel pin and mount it within the hole. This 1-inch oak dowel will join the trestle post and top together, and also provide extra strength for the half-lap joint in the crossbeam, which will not be glued into place. With any glue ups like this that provide structural support, I like leaving the clamps on for 12 to 24 hours. Usually leaving them on overnight does the trick. Well, with both trestle legs fully glued and joined together with the dowels, it was time to fit and secure the 4x4 cedar crossbeam. After measuring the distance between the trestle legs, I aligned the holes with the dowels and set everything into place. Once the beam was fully set, I used a Japanese flush cut saw to trim the dowels to their final size. To further strengthen the joinery of this trestle table base, I decided to install some hardware as well. After a long search on Amazon, I found some 3mm L brackets that would fit on either side of the beam. These brackets also help minimize any racking forces from side to side. I took it one step further and decided to also drive in 4 3.5-inch screws. To make sure I drove these screws straight, I used my Milescraft drilling guide with a depth stop engaged to make the pilot holes. I also countersunk the screw placements so the screws could reach the trestle post as well. From here, I mounted the 4 3.5-inch screws, 22 figure 8 fasteners, gave the whole base some extra sanding, and applied 3 coats of boiled linseed oil. My dad is my right-hand man when it comes to delivery, and we got the table loaded into the U-Haul and got it set up beautifully at the client's house. I'll be revealing the entire table in a future video, so stay tuned, and thanks for watching.